Hi, everybody. How are you? As I said to some of you, and I know there may be a few people streaming online, so this is set up in that way. But we are going to do some as a whole group, and then I am going to have everyone turn to the person or the few people next to you at times, and so an opportunity to both do some conversation as a whole group, get to know maybe somebody new, or have the conversations with people that you came with. But we are here for a session on Shabbat. And why? Well, let me back up. First of all, I haven't met all of you yet. My name is Sternberg. I just started as a rabbi here about 6 weeks ago, give or take. And I'm really excited for this because I love Shabbat. They asked me what I wanted to teach about, and I said the thing that I love the most about being Jewish is Shabbat, and I wanted to be able to share that with all of you. Shabbat is what I think is one of the first things we learn or associate with Judaism. Often, it really is. It's from our absolute youngest learners and kids. One of the first things they learn is how to say motzi, right? Mm-hmm. Or how to do the Shabbat blessings in general. They celebrate it. My daughter is almost 11 months old, and she is celebrating Shabbat in school, right? And so one of the first things we learn, but we often don't go beyond the basics for this or many things within Judaism. We know the blessings, or maybe or maybe not know the blessings. Many of us probably know that there are a few symbols associated with Shabbat, but what I want to do is go beyond that deeper meaning. And Shabbat is vast and wide. We'll say there is lots you can learn about Shabbat liturgy, Shabbat theology, Shabbat symbolism. We are going to focus today on Shabbat in the home, right? That there are a set of rituals that we do here at Temple, and there are a set of rituals that are traditionally done in the home. And so we're going to focus on that today. And in your packets, does anybody need one? Okay. In your packets, we have a couple of things just for context, a little bit of study, and then the next page is we're going to both study and also it's a take home that has a little bit more of an in-depth look at the Shabbat rituals that you can then take home and use as a little bit of a how-to guide if you're interested in going further. So the first thing, I want to open it up and say there are customs on Shabbat. There are commandments about Shabbat. And I believe there's no one way to do Shabbat. So we're going to learn about what's historical or traditional, I'll say, but to understand that Shabbat is in our, as modern Reformed Jews, not what is written about exclusively in our text, but there's so much more to it than that. So what I want to ask you is whether you experienced Shabbat first as a child, whether you experienced Shabbat the first time within the last few years, or whether you have yet to really experience Shabbat. What is your earliest memory of Shabbat? What's your earliest memory of experiencing it? What comes to mind? What stuck out to you?
My grandfather lighting the candles.
Your grandfather lighting the candles.
Because at home we didn't really do all that.
Okay.
And I do it now.
So family connections. What else? Don't be shy. Jump on in. A small group. We can all talk.
I was teaching my mother-in-law that I came here from the Philippines 8 years ago. And so when we do Shabbat dinner, she always serves roast chicken. So I told her that I'm going to share that Shabbat reminds me of roasted chicken.
I have to tell you, I went to a Shabbat dinner once of somebody that had never hosted Shabbat before at their house. And they said, what do you normally eat on Shabbat? And I said, chicken. That's what it is. What else? What are early memories of Shabbat?
My grandmother would always, and grandfather, they would tear toilet paper because one of the 39 commandments you can't tear, so they literally would stack up toilet paper. I mean, I'm not joking. That's
For me, since Shabbat wasn't really practiced at home, my memories of Shabbat is being hosted, hospitality of someone hosting you for Shabbat.
So we have family, we have hospitality, we have tradition, right? Shabbat is very much centered around food and tables and breaking bread together. So definitely tradition, and family, community. Anything else that comes to mind? Joy?
Well, for me, I started really getting into Shabbat around the time I was working like 80 hours a week. So it was like the one time of the week where I paused. So it was like making time precious.
So we're going to get to that. I'm going to hold on to that line of making time precious because I love that, and that's going to come back up momentarily. At the basic level, right, Shabbat is about rest, right? It's a break. It's the day of rest, what we'll call it. How does Shabbat challenge our culture's priorities and pace of life?
We are one of the highest number of hours, number of week in the world. I think we surpassed Japan after they stopped doing it because they were dying.
So it's countercultural to what our world really, or our community really looks like today in our country.
well, it blesses time.
Yeah.
Rather than things to do or space.
Yeah.
What makes it also very different for some people, not for everybody, is that all the stuff that you do during the week, watching TV, being on your iPhone or whatever, you don't do that.
Traditionally, you don't do it, but for
Yeah.
some people, it's the only time of week that they have to watch TV and do
Yeah.
nothing.
That's why I
So,
say some people.
yes.
Yeah, I love how it challenges the glorification of busyness.
Mhm.
I'm starting the Embracing in Judaism class this week, and Shabbat is what I'm most looking forward to. Starting to practice, because I feel the need for it. Just in my mind, I always feel like the need to be busy. So just to give myself that permission to rest.
Absolutely. So with all of that in mind, let's go to our text. On the front page of your packets here, we have what we'll call a sampling. A sampling of teachings about Shabbat, right? There is an entire tractate of Talmud about Shabbat. There are endless teachings about Shabbat. I took a very, very, very small piece of it. Biblical, a theological piece, and a rabbinic commentary. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about these first, and then we're going to move to our rituals. Does anybody want to read the first one for me in the English?
Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, for in 6 days God made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore God blessed the Shabbat day and hallowed it.
Okay. So remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, right? It's reminiscent of creation. It's reminiscent of commandments. It is kind of the centerpiece of Shabbat, comes from the biblical text. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And the next one, can anybody pick up there?
Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, so that your male and female slave may rest as you do. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and God freed you from there.
Okay. Later on in Deuteronomy, observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, right? The reminder that Shabbat is intrinsically tied to the redemption from Egypt, and that one of the ways that we thank God for that, right, biblically, is by observing the commandments, and Shabbat being one of those. There's the commandment to observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So we have these two texts, right? We've got remember and observe, Zahor and Shamor. are those two words. Does that sound familiar to anybody, right? So we remember and we observe the Sabbath day. Which of those speaks to you more? Remembering or observing?
Remembering.
Why?
Observing, it has, for me, immediately a connotation of, you have to. Don't ever try to say that.
But you don't have to remember it, just observe it. If someone said observe it, you observe it.
Observe. Point.
So they're both in command form, right? Both of the words are in command form.
I think for me, remember has resonance because it connects me to the centuries of Judaism before us, to this sense of connectedness, to this long tradition. And for me, that's very resonant.
Remember means keep it alive. If you're remembering, you're
Yeah.
keeping it alive.
See, I like observe
Yeah,
more
observe.
because I'm
Why?
very practical and like ritual oriented. Like the motions are what bring the meaning, and so observe hits me harder.
But if I remember, I could say, I don't need to observe it because I remember. To me, observing is.
Observing is way more abiding by the rules and regulations.
Well,
Okay.
it depends on your interpretation of the observation. I mean, we are Reformed modern Jews, so therefore observing could be the difference between, what is it, Herschel said, there's the walker, the museum goer, and I forgot the third type of Shabbat observer. So, I mean, as Reformed Jews, observe is really what provides meaning to you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm like you. I like the ritual.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're both important, but for me, Shamor is more like Shomer, to protect, right? It's more meaning, it's what I connect with, right? Like the do and you will understand element of it.
Yeah. So that's one, right? That's biblical. And we are breezing through this. There's so much more. Do not let this be the end or think this is the end of biblical Shabbat study, because it's not. So breezing through it. The theological piece. Can anybody read this one for us?
When history began, there was only one holiness in the world, holiness in time. The sanctity of time came first, the sanctity of man came second, and the sanctity of space last. Time was hallowed by God. The meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week we live under the tyranny of things of space. In the Sabbath we try to become attuned to holiness and time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation.
Okay. I included this one of, again, the many theological pieces of writing on Shabbat, because it is my favorite and it's the one I identify with the most. The idea of Shabbat being a sanctuary in time. And I think this speaks so well to Shabbat because of what we were talking about before, the idea of it challenging our modern schedules, right? And Heschel's idea that Shabbat is, it's not just sacred because God said it was sacred, it's sacred because there is a designated time practice to it that allows us to totally separate from the rest of our weeks and the rest of our schedules, right? And just be for that period of time.
Would you say then that part of the specialness or sanctity of Shabbat has to do with our choice to fully engage with it?
100%. I would say that. And I think, and as I said, this is, we're talking about this from the modern Reform perspective, right? And it certainly is a choice to engage with it, right? Shabbat happens every week, whether or not we choose to observe it, right? And in our lives today, we often have to be intentional about acknowledging, oh, this is actually Shabbat. This is a time that I'm supposed to do something different. And so it really is, how do we choose to engage with it? And that doesn't look the same for everybody. That's something that I think is important to remember. Yeah.
It's interesting, and I was just thinking about this, that it adds a rhythm to our time, as opposed to just being, straight line.
Yes.
And I live with my daughter right now, and she has a almost 4-month-old baby. And so he's establishing the rhythm of life.
Mhm.
When you go to bed, and it's interesting to see, like, he doesn't get his bedtime when it's time for bed. He is a miserable little boy.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that, God's adding specialness to a rhythm to time is actually, a gift to us.
I think Judaism, as a whole, is a religion that pays attention to time and pays attention to rhythm, right? The way that we celebrate holidays according to their seasons, and this one very much that we celebrate Shabbat on a rhythm. Exactly. I think it's a beautiful gift for us, and that's a beautiful way to think about Shabbat. Oh, I think it's something that I've heard many people write about and people speak about, the idea of thinking of Shabbat as a gift. So.
It's much like getting to sleep every night and renew and refresh and observe the cycles every night. We're aligning with the cycle of the sun.
Yes.
Then once a week, we get to refresh in a different way.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely. Other thoughts on this right now? We're gonna have more time to ruminate on it. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Will anybody read that? Rabbi Shimon ben
Lakish said, on Shabbat, a person is given an extra soul, and at the conclusion of Shabbat, it is taken from him. On the seventh day, he rested and was refreshed. Vayinafash. The Gemara interprets, woe by for the soul nefesh that is lost. The special soul departs when Shabbat ends.
Talking about refreshed, right? Again, this is one of many, many rabbinic commentaries, but the idea that we receive an extra soul on Shabbat. So many ways we can interpret that, but a piece from the rabbis that we have something extra that's gained. We have a little bit of that extra light, a little bit of that extra faith, that we have a little bit of God in us in a different way on Shabbat than we do during the rest of the week.
We get to take vacation every week.
It's like a vacation every week, exactly.
I've been curious about this for a while. Where does it go, and what work does it do when it's not Shabbat?
It returns to God. I don't know what it does. It's a great question. I want us to take a minute, maybe turning to some people next to you. Feel free to turn your chairs. Feel free to turn to someone you know, but I would encourage you to turn to someone you don't know and introduce yourself, and to look back at these. Which one speaks to you the most, if any of these? Or what are you taking away from it? What are you thinking about currently?
So what do you exactly want to say?
What is speaking to you? Which one of these do you identify with?
Put no labels. No, I grew up at home where Shabbat, I didn't like candles. We didn't have registers. Grandparents were European immigrants, and they wouldn't work. My grandfather never liked monthly off. My grandmother, she wouldn't work. Like John's son, basically, Shom Shabbos, like, it was not caught my foot on the gas top low.
I watch like if there's sunlight, and if there's not sunlight, it's just in classes. I watch some of my for a bit. Yeah, for me, my first everybody else is celebrating. Right now, and everyone else So it's like I don't necessarily I'm sitting in that moment. So there's a lot of like stuff that'll come up. Yeah,
Saturday.
I love sports. I love the.
Someone said that spiritual now have white people arguing respectfully or just disagreeing. Comments are very someone told me there was no actual interpretation. Yeah, you asked and all of what is it really? You're just describing what happened. That was just the rabbi said.
Like every year.
We're gonna take 2 more minutes.
I signed up for the Rabbi emails. Now I get like 20 of them.
Yeah.
But the Rabbi's near something, I think I'm quoting from. If every Jew strictly observes Shabbat, Mashiach will sign to be.
That's the belief there.
A lot of this stuff is esoteric. I have to like read anything out of it. Yeah, that's right. Supposed to be 18. Sign the signature rabbi now it's 18 minutes. She came for 85. No, she's not. I'm just a friend in India started put them in the sink, fill up the water, and almost eating them. Yeah, the tongue.
All right, we're gonna come back together and continue on in our journey of Shabbat. So the first ritual that we do is light candles, right? So we light candles. The way that the process goes, I'm jumping around on the page, so just bear with me, is we light our candles, and then there is a custom of making 3 circles with your hands, you've seen before, and covering your eyes, and then reciting the blessing. The blessing that many of us know, have heard, have maybe said many times, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahag l'kner shel Shabbat. That first bit of blessing, that's actually a rabbinic piece of text. The Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam piece, it is the precursor to many of our blessings, and who has sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to light the Shabbat candles. A couple of things. How many candles do we have?
2.
Traditionally 2 candles. A couple of fun facts, right?
add.
You can add. You can do as many candles as you would like. And a lovely tradition is some people do a candle for every member of the family. There are probably other ways to do it, right? You could do a symbolic number of candles for something happening in the world. This is where we start to have a little bit of flexibility in our modern world, right?
Relatives.
Right, relatives who have passed away. There is symbolism for everything and a way you are supposed to do it, but it doesn't have to be the only way you do it. And I think that's something that I find special about Shabbat. So when to light? Traditionally, at least 18 minutes before sunset. Why 18 minutes?
Because you can't light fire on Shabbat traditionally.
Right? You can't light fire on Shabbat.
Why not do 5 minutes?
Why not do 5 minutes? Because that was the buffer time the rabbis thought of,
And
right?
it's 18, it's 6.
It's an 18, one of those numbers that we find in lots of places. But really the idea is that we have that buffer time before Shabbat starts. Yes.
Did they really have the concept of minutes?
So
How this was started?
when I
And
say,
what watch did they use?
right? That's one of the things that we know is that this was written at some point during rabbinic time. It was maybe passed along through the generations. So probably not, right? It may not have been in what we think of as 18 minutes. It's very possible.
In the early Middle Ages, they were very, very well aware of time.
Right. It could have been. We don't know, right? At some point, this was developed, this was passed along, and it is a custom, right? 18 minutes is not in Torah, right? It's just not. It's not found anywhere in Torah. This is one of those things that is a buffer, right? The idea is that we light our candles before Shabbat starts. And this is, again, it could be a tale that was passed down, right? We don't know. But the idea is that it's before. But what is really beautiful, I think, is that same place that we learn 18 minutes before, we learn that Shabbat ends 42 minutes after sunset, which gives us an extra hour of Shabbat. And I think there's something beautiful about a 25-hour Shabbat that gives you not just a day, but that little bit extra to experience Shabbat. I saw a hand. Yeah.
So before sunset or before the first star?
Before sunset. Shabbat ends when there are 3 stars in the sky. That 42 minutes, they say, is to make sure that there's actually 3 stars in the sky.
If it was cloudy in antiquity, how do they know when?
I knew that question was coming.
That's a great question. What I always say, and for those of you who might hear me teach again is that you can ask me any question and I cannot promise to know the answer. But what I can promise to do is help you figure it out later. So what happened when it was cloudy, I don't know, but there's these kind of ambiguous times and rules that were passed down throughout the ages. But the goal of it was to make sure that we had that buffer time, that we knew we were lighting candles before Shabbat started, and that we had that time to make sure that those 3 stars were in the sky when Shabbat ended. So that is when to light. Why do we light, right? Because before electric light, we needed candlelight, right? That is the practical purpose. There is the symbolic purpose that adding light to our homes, especially on Shabbat, has something meaningful to it, right? And there's something spiritual, that it reminds us of the menorah in the temple, and that our home rituals replace those temple rituals after the temple's destruction, right? So again, of these 3, what's speaking to you about lighting Shabbat candles? Anything? Why do we use light as such a powerful symbol?
Well,
Whether here, whether elsewhere.
Rashid, I'm trying to remember. Light was created, first. I'm trying to remember.
So
The difference between darkness and,
separating darkness to light. Why else might light as a concept?
Goodness and holiness.
I mean, you'll be less afraid if you can see.
You'll be less afraid if you can see, right?
We can also see ourselves and others.
Say more about that.
I think it's just a sense of not being, of a sense of being in community, of being connected, of being to see and value your family and those around you, of not feeling so alone.
Beautiful.
I think of it like when I started doing it, my daughter really loved the candles, and I think about how they say that, you know, when kids start learning Torah, they put honey on the page so that how to lick it off, so that you know, they'll enjoy it and they'll think of it as something sweet. And I think it's kind of like that with the Sabbath, you know, to make it a beautiful space and enjoyable space for us, for our kids.
What kind of intentions might you or somebody bring in when you're lighting Shabbat candles? So if you think about it, it's the moment that we pause and we start our Shabbat rituals, right? Of course, you might start Shabbat by making dinner. You might start Shabbat by driving to temple. You might start Shabbat in other ways, but really based on our tradition, lighting the candles is the very first thing you do. So what intention might one set when they're getting ready to light their Shabbat candles?
Individually, but for me, it's bringing in the peace and what's good and what can and should and hopefully is holy.
I usually set an intention of letting go of what, I usually have brushed home, right? So I'm usually setting an intention of letting that go and settling into my family space.
The light of the candle is a symbol of the entire light of the universe, and you're lighting it right there to mark the Shabbat.
For me, it's a reminder for myself and anyone around me that it only takes a tiny bit of fire or light to light up a dark space. And that's symbolic of everything we do in life.
So candles, there's a little bit more on here.
Can I ask a question out of curiosity?
Of course.
Based on what you said, that you just need a little light to light a whole place. Do you all avoid using lights at home during Shabbat, or keep the house a little darker?
Don't avoid it.
Well, I mean, technically, they're not supposed to be doing work, right? So you should have another something.
Yeah. I think if there's in a traditional household, one would, in theory, not turn on the lights, but they would usually leave them on, right? The intention of Shabbat is not to be in the dark, right? And not that candlelight is the only way, especially in even like religious communities, the most religious communities would not say the intention is to be in the dark, right? But it's the right. It's the act of actually like turning on and doing the work that is prohibited. But I think the Shabbat candles are representative of actually the need to bring more light into Shabbat.
And just to expand on what I said earlier, because I realized maybe it sounded confusing, is that when it comes to things in life that happen and make us feel frustrated or upset, to me, the Shabbat candles are a reminder that even when reality seems really dark, all it takes is like a little bit of light.
Yeah,
Like it could be
totally
hope,
get
it could be proactivity, it could be courage, it could be, a vision of something that we believe in for things to look less dark.
So I didn't understand the prohibition of the light as work, turning on the lights.
I think it's 39 prohibited activities. That's one of the creating energy. I think
What I understood it to be was completing a circuit. Turning on the light or turning on your car, you're completing a circuit. You're not supposed to complete anything. So then my question now is, you can turn it off because now you're breaking the circuit, right?
You're not supposed to destroy.
I don't think you're supposed to
on Sabbath.
destroy on the Sabbath. Yeah, you're not supposed to destroy either. So no, you're not supposed to.
Dawn.
Yeah.
Dawn.
Yes, that is my understanding. Does that sound right though?
But can we get back to the point that Sarah made, which was about the Shabbat candles not being for the sake of work or purely of providing the only light, but more of providing beauty, sanctification, hope, a sense of the specialness of the occasion rather than something purely utilitarian. Is that?
Yeah. And that what's interesting is that you can look at these rituals from a historical perspective or a practical perspective, and you can look at them from a symbolic perspective. And both of those were actually important at some point in history, right? That there was a point in history in which lighting candles before Shabbat was necessary. And it wasn't just the two symbolic candles. It was lighting all of the candles before Shabbat. And that was really important at a time where there wasn't electricity. But now when we don't need that, when, a religious household will have their, the lights on timers, and that's taken care of. So they don't need it for the practical purposes, but they need it for the ritual purpose, for the symbolic purpose, to offer some additional intention or meaning into Shabbat, because we're not supposed to observe Shabbat in a way that's just on autopilot, right? If we're lighting our Shabbat candles and saying the blessing and have nothing to it and have no meaning or intention behind it, then we're not fulfilling the mitzvah of Shabbat, right? So at some point, there was a time where it was actually necessary to light before Shabbat because you couldn't light on Shabbat, but you needed your house to be filled with light, for the 25-hour period. But it didn't, I would hope that at that time it wasn't without meaning as well, right? But there was a practical piece to it. There's a little bit more on here, but I want to take us to, well, the last thing I'll say is that when asking who lights, right? Again, this is tradition. This is not law, but there was a tradition of women lighting the Shabbat candles because men were already at synagogue. Now, I hope everybody will feel empowered to light Shabbat candles. But there is some really beautiful imagery of, and some really beautiful kind of feeling around the connection between women and lighting Shabbat candles that also exists. Okay, Kiddush. Let's continue on. So what is important about Kiddush is that it is not just one blessing. Friday evening Kiddush is 3 separate blessings. One is Genesis 2, 1 through 3. The introductory verses. Then we do the blessing over the wine. And then we do a blessing sanctifying Shabbat. It's a very long piece. Well, not very long. It's a longer piece than just the simple blessing. And they are 3 separate parts that are often all combined into one. What is Kiddush? So that word, very, very, very important word. What does it sound like? Kadosh, Kaddish, Kiddushin. What am I missing? There's a few others, right? Kedusha, right? Kadesh from the Seder, right? There's, right, Mekadesh, right? There's lots of different versions of this word. What does it mean? Holy, right? So the root, Kuf Daled Resh, Kadesh, is the root for the word holiness. And all these different versions of this word are versions of the word that mean holiness in some capacity, and holiness meaning sanctifying or meaning separating. And the idea that that Kiddush is sanctifying or making something special, making something separate, making something different, we'll call it, right? These are all kind of connected, is marked through the blessing over the wine, right? Why might wine be the symbol that we use for holiness?
Well, just a shot, I don't know. Sometimes the grape harvest might not come in, so I was thankful that it did, and now you can drink.
Okay.
I don't know if that, just thought of it.
What else?
Blood, life, the symbol of life by resembling color
Yeah.
and liquid.
I think it brings on a togetherness also.
Oh, I
With
just
that, no.
think of, I forgot what it's called, when they take a vow and they aren't allowed wine or vinegar or any grape. I forgot what they're called, but that's.
Doesn't Nazarite vow?
Yeah, so obviously there's some sort of importance with specifically to the grape.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I have no idea.
I would assume other cultures also use wine, and I think
So many
Israelites.
many cultures use wine, right? It is coming from the fruit of the vine. It's one of the 7 species. It is, from the land, and it is in many cultures and universally it has a sweetness to it, right? That's important, and it improves with age, right? That's a kind of symbolic piece, and it is that symbol that we use to celebrate most things, right? The reason that we have it at a wedding, right? It is a symbol of joy. It is a symbol of hope. It is a symbol of holiness, right?
It also takes a lot of work.
It does take a lot of work,
And
yes.
a lot of things have to go right to
Yeah,
get good wine.
Exactly.
And wine, more than maybe anything else, preserves the flavor of the history of the grape as it's growing.
Yeah.
So it captures a lot of time just in something that we're eating, drinking.
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of love, a lot of holiness in those grapes growing into grapes, and then you're taking their juice and fermenting them, and then finally you have that drink that unites everybody around it. So it has so much history around it.
But I also think that what Lane said is true, that there are many cultures that have wine rituals, and I think it is connected in its similarity to blood and as a symbol of life. A lot of cultures have rituals that either use wine or water.
Yeah.
But, as KT said, wine takes additional work and take generations of work actually to create wine.
If we're looking at as a celebration of the creator God, that, we rested on the mission after we finished creating. And, the grape is kind of something, we grow out of the ground, and it's like, something that God has.
It's, yep. Definitely. So there's a few connections here. There's the symbolic pieces of all the things that we can think of that the fruit of the vine will say is, whether wine, it takes a long time. There's a lot of dedication to it. It's a very long process. It comes from it comes from the earth, right? It is, it's a work of God's creation, very much so. And it's, again, one of those things that has developed over time as a symbol of holiness and a symbol of joy. There is definitely a process for the how-to, right? How do we make kiddush? That we fill the cup. We're supposed to fill it all the way to the top. Some say that even spilling it a little is over the top is a sign of blessing and abundance, but it should be totally filled to the brim. You're supposed to hold it in your dominant hand. Don't ask me why, but there's a few things I found as fun facts for you, but you're supposed to hold it in your dominant hand. And we're supposed to recite the full text, all three parts, and then you drink it and you pass it, right? Everybody is supposed to get a little taste of the kiddush wine. Grape juice, they say, is fully acceptable and embraced. It's the idea of it, something coming from the fruit of the vine. And that is kind of the simple version of how we make kiddush. I want to give us the opportunity to look at these blessings, acknowledging time. So just for a minute, and look at three of these blessings. The idea of creation, the idea of blessing the wine itself, and then the idea of sanctifying Shabbat. Why are they all together? Like, why are we saying them all as one? Any thoughts that come to mind?
It's like the full spectrum from spirit to matter and life.
There's no right answer here. This is more of just trying to create some meaning out of the ritual and the tradition.
I never knew this one. Spilled wine is blessing,
So that,
and the cup should be filled to the brim. But we never make room for that.
Okay.
Why?
that I don't know, but I'll try to find out.
Special kiddush cups to complete it.
And that's what they're for, right? To this spell. A lot of these questions, and I know I've said it, but I'll repeat it again, is that a lot of these probably came from somebody who discovered that, wrote it down, and passed it down through the generations, right? The spilled wine, the full cup, right? These are not necessarily, right, from Torah. They're definitely not from Torah, right? They have developed over time, and that is what's so special about these Shabbat rituals. Yeah.
Psalm 23 is where my cup runneth
The cup over, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's from this.
Right. And so somebody probably drew a connection from Psalm 23 to Shabbat in some way and started filling the cups all the way.
So is it just a tradition, or does it come from Talmud?
I would say that one is probably a tradition, but I am not 100% sure. Does anybody know?
I had the Mishnah.
It could be a midrash, right?
it would be, yeah.
I can try to find out. I'll make a note to find that one for you. Okay, we're gonna go to motzi. Motzi is the blessing over the challah. The blessing, praise are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. So this one, I think even more so than the fruit of the vine, is about the connection between the earth and God's creation of the earth and the product of God's creation. It is very much the centerpiece food of the Shabbat meal in Jewish tradition. We're supposed to use 2 whole loaves, and that is to recall the double portion of manna from God that God gave the Israelites before Shabbat. And it symbolizes very much so the partnership between God and humanity, right? That partnership is represented by bread and by the grains that are taken from the earth in order to create the challah. But what's interesting is that challah is not challah until it goes through the process of becoming challah with the ritual challah separation. So this is something that only is supposed to happen, if I remember the amount correctly, when you make 5 pounds or more of it. But when you make challah in large quantities, you're supposed to take separate a little bit, just like a handful. You bless it, you burn it, and then the rest of the batch is challah.
I've always wondered, does it really burn well? I mean, how does that work?
No, it's really hard. Yeah, it's right. It's not eaten, and it is reminding us that there is kind of that separation, and that we're giving it back to God, right? It's the idea of burning and sacrificing a little bit of it to return to God.
What bothers me is you're wasting food. You shouldn't waste it.
Yeah.
So,
It's not being wasted.
You don't waste it
It's a
because you give it to
callback
God.
to the
I understand.
Temple
The humans.
Exactly. It's recalling the temple sacrifices. So it's the ritual piece of it, right? It's saying that bread is not just bread, because if bread was just bread, why would we need challah, right? We could use a loaf of wheat bread, right? And thinking about the kind of modern equivalencies of it, this is the blessing that we use for bread, right? So it is very often that you might be eating pizza on Shabbat. There's no reason you can't say motzi and make Shabbat using a pizza crust, right? Or whatever other food. If you're having, Thai food on Shabbat, right? There's no reason that you can't do that and still have that moment of acknowledging Shabbat with whatever you have, right? One of the barriers often to practicing and celebrating Shabbat is somebody saying like, oh, I don't have a challah for Shabbat dinner, or I don't have a Kiddush cup and to, bless the wine. It's not in here, but there is a Mishnah that says that you can use, I think it's a Mishnah, it says you can use, or there's some writing, it says that you can use beer instead, right? You can use other things, but it's the idea that Shabbat should not be prohibitive to just being at a dining room table with candles and a Kiddush cup and challah, right? Shabbat is however we make Shabbat, very much so.
We have a great kosher bakery here.
I hear
Get
it.
there early Friday morning.
A couple of other fun facts on here about motzi. Let's keep going for the sake of time. We reach what I like to call our minor rituals in a way, right? They're not the 3 famous, but they are some other really beautiful Shabbat table rituals that we have before the meal. We have the idea of blessing the children, which is a bit of an addition and then the priestly blessing. It says, may God make you or bless you like Ephraim and Manasseh, or like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then we continue with the priestly blessing that we say in many, many other occasions, but we also say on Shabbat. The moment for acknowledging family, very much so. I think there's ways absolutely to adapt this to blessing whoever is around your table, right? Or whoever you are welcoming in Shabbat with. And it's a beautiful practice to get into, blessing your children or blessing whoever you're surrounded with, whatever loved ones, friends, neighbors, family, strangers, knowing that everybody can enter into Shabbat with a blessing, I think is a really beautiful and incredible thing.
Well, for your sons, why do you want to be like Ephraim and Manasseh? They got away, and I remember they got along well.
Because they were the only siblings in the Torah that didn't argue. That's why.
Okay.
They were the only siblings in the Torah who did not have something that was a barrier between them, that it was a peaceful relationship without, stealing or killing or
each other.
any of that. Okay, the next one, hand washing. Traditionally, after you Kiddush, before Motzi, you're intended to go wash your hands with the blessing, and then you remain silent until Motzi. Another custom. The symbolic act, I would say, of spiritually cleansing ourselves and spiritually preparing ourselves for the meal through washing our hands. It's the same way that we do it on Passover during the Seder. We wash our hands a couple of times as that kind of spiritual cleansing, and that transfers over here.
Question.
Yeah.
When you get up, before you get up, you do the Moani, but then when you get up, you do the Netilat Yadayim. But then do you have to be silent until you break bread, or because
Like in
I've
the
never
morning?
done that?
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, this is just a Shabbat thing.
Well, it's because you're washing your hands for preparation of doing the blessing of the bread, so so it's separated.
And then the last one on here is Eshet Chayil, which is, I didn't put all of it on here, but Eshet Chayil is a poem from Proverbs, and it starts with the words, a woman of valor who can find, her worth is far above pearls. And it is intended to honor the contributions of a woman in the home. And acknowledging the woman's role prior to Shabbat. And this has been, and can do a much, much, much longer study on Eshet Chayil another time, but this has been deeply controversial in many progressive communities of really placing a woman in the home as her role, but has recently been, lots of literature has been out there reclaiming Eshet Chayil as the many hats that a woman plays in all areas of life, and kind of a dedication to strength as one enters into Shabbat. So it's another tradition that happens that looks different in different communities, I would say, but absolutely has ways to be reclaimed and uplifted in a more progressive Jewish community. Okay, we just made it through a lot of Shabbat rituals. What are you thinking about? What is resonating with you? Is there a Shabbat ritual that you might want to try that you don't normally do, or a new reason or purpose for a Shabbat ritual that you already do?
Well, I'll share. The whole reason why I came here wasn't because I don't do Shabbat, but I've gotten out of the habit. So just reconnecting with Shabbat was really important to me. So for me, that's the whole purpose of this. That's what I'm taking away. And this is just kind of like a nice way of being around other people who are like resonate with Shabbat, and just a reminder that I did enjoy it, so I need to get back to the habit of doing it. So yeah, pretty much all these.
Lovely.
It's easier when you're retired.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I got another 20 years.
Yeah, I know. Some of us,
Humble brag.
I mean, it is easy.
What else? Is there anybody else found something that they are interested in kind of reclaiming or setting a new intention around?
I feel the same way.
I think that's
Just get back
okay.
in the habit of observing and
Yeah.
finding meaning again.
I was thinking of how nice it is to take the Esher Chayu and look at the last part where it says, you know, we have really been celebrating everyone's dedication, kindness, and strength, a way of expressing gratitude and love before entering Shabbat's joy. That could be something that's like an updated way to celebrate Shabbat, also not only with your family members, but people you host.
Absolutely. What are the barriers that we face into making Shabbat a part of our week every
Temple.
week?
We go to temple.
No, what are the barriers?
Yeah,
Like,
but to me, it's a barrier for lighting the candles at home. Because you're supposed to do it a certain time in advance.
you can do it anytime before that. So you could light your Shabbat candles before coming to temple.
But they are supposed to burn an hour or so after.
Stop up the sink, seriously, that's a lot of.
So
Yeah.
we have to put everything in the sink for the darn candles.
So you put it in the sink.
And if it falls, it just,
We do that too, like when we come, like, that's our thing,
Yeah.
because she's sticking the sink.
I think the biggest struggle was the modern world.
Yeah.
Because we can't all live where we can walk to synagogue.
Yeah.
We can't, we do like an hour and a half walk.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I absolutely think our modern world is very much a barrier. You know, when at whatever stage of life, you know, when you have kids that play sports and their sports happen on a Friday night, right? Or if you are working and you don't maybe leave work until 5 something, and then you get home and then it's, you know, exhausting. And there are barriers to feeling like we can prioritize Shabbat. But one of the things that I feel strongly about is reclaiming that Shabbat does not have to happen in the way that it always, or it has been done for, you know, the thousands of years, but that if we can bring a little bit of Shabbat into our lives each week, that it only lifts us up, right? It only helps us, that we could all use that break, right? We started this conversation talking about how Shabbat is very countercultural to where we are and how we exist in our world right now. And anything we can do to lift it up, whether it's lighting a candle, right? Whether it is saying motzi over a piece of pizza, right? Whether it is saying, you know, even if we're lighting candles late, we're lighting candles early, whatever it might be. Filling a cup, whether it's a wine, whether it's a beer, whether it's a water, right? All the way to the top, letting it spill over a little bit and letting that be a little extra ounce of blessing, right? Doing something with intention and meaning to welcome in Shabbat and to observe Shabbat at some point within that 5-hour time period, I think only adds to our experience and only adds to the how we live Jewishly in our world right now, because we are living in a very secular world and a world where it is sometimes really hard to be Jewish. And these little bits, these little things like Shabbat can help us reclaim that in really powerful ways. I want to just point you to the back of this, and I've included a few resources. You may or may not have seen them. Some are just, you know, Reform Judaism's website, PJ Library, which is very family oriented. Ritual Wall is one of my favorites, and One Table. And One Table is a really, I think, important organization that is helping inspire people to celebrate Shabbat together on Friday nights. encourage you to check out all of those if you haven't ever. And to know that Shabbat is a really special thing. I think somebody here called it a gift earlier, and it is a gift that we have as a Jewish community that I hope you all will, whether you're entering into a Shabbat practice or starting a Shabbat practice for the first time, take a little bit of this and find something that feels meaningful to you.
Just real quickly, someone here, Rabbi or lay leader, a long time ago, said there's really no literal translation of Shabbat into any language. So, yeah, you're supposed to rest. So what are your thoughts on that? I'm trying to put you on the spot.
I guess that would be true. I don't.
The word Saturday in Portuguese and Spanish is sábado.
Sábado.
It sounds like Sabbath.
So it could be a Latin. It could.
It was intentionally coming from that.
That's a
Is that a Latin language?
Yeah, it's a Latin.
It's a Latin
language,
right?
For me and for
So like
Oh, wow.
I guess that could be
Yeah, in
it.
French it's samedi.
So possibly. Any other questions, comments, takeaways, anything?
My takeaway is a lot about the intention of the law before the letter of the law. Because if you go by the letter of the law, it's so easy to mess it up and not do anything at all because you're gonna do it perfect.
Yeah.
So function on the kavanah.
It is. It's all about intention. I believe that there is a practice, there is a structure for Shabbat, but the intention I think supersedes that very much so.
Yeah, one of the things that I have done if I don't do anything on Shabbat, I answer at least this one question and I pick one item. How is Shabbat going to be different than any other day? It doesn't matter if it's just painting or if it's lighting a candle or it's just that one, and that's my focus. So if you're starting off small or restarting like me, just answer that one question and pick the one thing.
I think that's a great suggestion, and all you need is one thing, exactly. Whether Shabbat here, whether Shabbat in the home, just know that I'll say on behalf of everybody at Temple Israel, we're really hoping you will experience Shabbat with us at some point soon as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, let me put those, yeah, I want to keep one.
Thank you, good.
I want to,
Perfect first.
because when I look at those resources.
Oh, hi, I am so, I apologize, I was so embarrassed. I had it shot literally on and I got excited. That was
Yeah.